Hey there, it's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. We all know what that means. Another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. What do you think about this weather?
Oh, I love it.
Do you really?
My hair's loving it for sure.
Do you?
Andy
Last
doesn't have-
week it
Last
was
week
cold.
reminded me why I no longer live in upstate New York.
Right.
Bottom line, that was it. That's why I moved, because I couldn't stand my hands getting numb. from
Introduce
hitting a
yourself.
Baseball. Hey, Andy Kahn, Director of Victim Services, Crime Stoppers of Houston.
Introduce yourself, Emily.
Emily DeToto, attorney at law, 27 years, board certified in criminal law.
We appreciate you joining us today,
I
and we're
got
going to
a
take.
question for the panel.
Uh-oh.
We were discussing this earlier today, because that's what we do at Crime Stoppers. Discuss
Discuss.
very pertinent, important issues. So there's these different types of Tootsie Rolls.
All right.
Right.
Okay, which, I mean, I'm definitely prefer these long, thin ones as
Right.
opposed to these
Oh, yeah.
bulky
Nope.
ones.
Me
Do
too.
you?
Yeah, I do.
No, I object. In fact, it's funny you brought this up. I was at the nail salon. They gave out those
These?
hard to unravel ones.
Yeah.
I gave up. That's easier.
Easier to open.
It's easier to open.
So, if you're out there watching, weigh in on, what you think is the better Tootsie Roll.
The best is when it's in the middle of the sucker, I think.
That's a Tootsie
A Tootsie Pop,
That's an
yeah.
entirely different.
And we'll still never get to the bottom of how many licks. it
Right,
takes.
that's right. One thing's for certain, this will ruin your dental work. I know
Actually,
that
I
much.
had no cavities last time.
Really?
I know, see,
Congratulations.
it's
Dude, you're like-
amazing, isn't
You
it?
should.
And you're still eating Tootsie Rolls.
Absolutely. I got a clean bill.
You're flossing, right? You're doing an excellent job at flossing.
I don't do anything.
I want
It's
one of the
great.
good ones I like before.
Which one?
That one.
Yeah, the easy to
Oh,
open.
you can
ones.
have them all.
Thank
Heck.
you.
One of the
This
things
is my
that,
nickname. Kidding.
Tootsie Roll. One, that used to be Mayor Whitmire's. Remember that?
Tootsie, the movie?
Yeah, right.
Yes,
When-
right. That was her
When
nickname.
Kathy Whitmire was mayor and that
Yes.
movie with Dustin Hoffman, right?
Hoffman,
That's funny.
Jessica Lange.
And they
Charles
did kind of
Gurney,
look
Bill
alike,
Murray.
right?
Yes.
Kathy Whitmire and Dustin Hoffman is a woman.
It was Robin Williams.
No.
Oh, no, Tootsie. Sorry. I'm not. I'm showing my young age.
But
No,
you are.
Shouldn't go on Jeopardy with that.
One of the things we want to talk about today is some new laws. All these went into effect in September, right?
Yep, they did. Two of them I was aware of. One of them caught me totally off guard.
Let's start with that one.
Yesterday. So there's a case involving a softball coach in Houston, and he was charged with child grooming. And so when I was asked to look at this yesterday, I went, "There's no such thing as child grooming." And then I looked and I went, "Wow,
There
this
is.
this is a brand new law, child grooming." You
What-
didn't know it, did you?
No,
They
I
didn't
had
give
no,
you a
Emily
brief-
didn't know
I
either.
definitely did not know it.
They didn't tell you, like, you don't get a thing at Fox News that says
On the
like,
new
new laws.
laws,
that go into
unfortunately
effect.
not. What does it involve?
So basically, he was carrying on a relationship. It's basically enticing, coercing, or trying to engage with someone that will eventually lead to some sort of sexual contact. But you don't have to have sexual contact for this law to go into effect. Hence, child grooming as opposed to sexual assault of a child and so forth.
When you first heard that, you had concerns.
Oh, because, I mean, until I looked at the language of the statute, my first reaction was anybody who volunteers at their child's school and who gives people gifts or who helps low-income families or who coaches Little League or coaches boxing or
Yeah.
is a do-gooder, if someone perceives it the wrong way, then all of a sudden they're grooming.
Right.
The language made it a little bit clearer, but
What-
then-
go over
Here's the
what makes
language. And I'll tell you what, I'll give you another Tootsie Roll if you can tell me what section of the Texas Penal
Oh, yeah.
Code this is in.
oh, I know it,
Guess.
49 point whatever.
Close,
I
15.032.
was,
You're only 34 away.
What's the language to it?
So basically, it says that a person commits an offense if he or she, pronouns, knowingly persuades, induces, entices, or coerces, or attempts to persuade, induce, entice, or coerce a child younger than 18 years of age to engage in sexual contact or activity.
So that would make it the difference between actually being charged with
Sexual
child
assault.
molestation, yeah, sexual assault is, it did not happen, but the defendant did all kinds of things to try to make that happen.
How would you defend that?
Well, that's very interesting because, this seems like one of the easiest things to accuse someone of and the most difficult thing to defend yourself from.
Right,
Because it's all in the, it's subjective into what the recipient believes is happening.
yeah.
And so let's say people are going through divorce, the old go-to was to accuse the person of sexual assault.
That still happens a lot,
This
don't you
happens
think,
a
in
lot,
family
yeah.
court?
Domestic
Yes.
violence,
now-
your battered spouse,
But
yeah.
now,
Yeah.
I mean, in this day and age, a lot of this is going to be electronic media evidence. And let's say that they are going through a divorce, right?
Right,
Who has control of the child's phone?
that's a good point.
Mommy or daddy?
Yeah,
So I can really see problems in someone being set up, an innocent person being set up, especially if the child is a minor, whose parents set up their cell phone and mommy or daddy has access to it.
and they could kind of manipulate things.
Exactly. They can send the messages,
That's a good point.
Yeah.
they can send messages to and from.
Are
So-
those cases where someone they think they're talking to
Right,
a prostitute or a child or whatever, and they're really
Right.
talking to an undercover cop.
right.
Are those easy cases to defend or no?
They're very difficult to defend because it's all documented. And the officers are the ones who instigate the naughty talk.
Right,
And so if you're dealing with someone who was already at predilection to do what they were trying to do,
yeah,
they're going to fall prey to that bait, if you will.
yeah,
And then it just goes downhill from there. They just go into this dark, dark road where they start talking about things they want to do. And by the time they go to meet who they think is a child, which is actually a police officer, several of the cases I've had like that, they all end up confessing and,
because there's so much evidence.
right, yeah, so.
When it comes to prostitution, does the undercover cop has to instigate, there's
Right.
money
Well, there
involved,
has-
right?
There has to be like a quid pro quo. There has to be an
Yeah.
agreement that for money in exchange for a sexual act. I mean, there's times where it can be, alluded to, but a lot of times they want the perpetrator to actually say, what they want.
Right,
So this law firm here has written kind of a briefing on this, and tell me if you agree.
on which, on the.
On the child
yeah.
grooming, basically says, they predicts the problems with the Texas new law, which they state is ambiguous and overbroad.
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, because it's everything but the kitchen and the kitchen sink.
Right.
All the ways and manner and means that you just read off. I just
Well, and
worry
one of the
about-
things that would fall into is someone's charged for attempting
Right.
to commit a crime. Whenever anything is based on that, is that easier to defend or no?
It's easier to defend, but then if the language is overbroad, then anything can be considered attempting. What
Right,
if you prepared a text and never sent it, but someone got your phone?
yeah,
That's why
As an attempting.
I tell families a lot of times who are upset because they weren't charged with attempted murder. They
Right.
were charged with ag assault with
Right.
and I tell them,
It's the same.
it's easier to
prove.
prove
Right.
because now you got to prove the intent was to, right. So
Yes.
rather, and it's the same penalty.
Right, it's the same punishment range, so
Right. Yeah.
why make the
That's why you
state's
don't
job
see
more
many
difficult?
attempted murder.
Well,
trials.
and isn't that the case too sometimes with, if a child is murdered, they might prosecute injury to a child rather
Right.
than murder?
Yes, I actually sat in sentencing the other day in the 42nd where this woman, mother of three, left her children by a swimming pool to go to the corner store. She had a drug addiction, sadly. And one of the children drowned. He was 3. And so instead of charging her with murder, which obviously that would be hard to prove, it
Right,
was injury to a child, but the punishment range is.
it's the same,
Yeah, it's the
right? Yeah,
same,
you'd say
right.
the same prison
Yeah,
sentence.
she ended up getting probation. The judge granted her probation. But she did say that on the anniversary of the child's death, that woman would have to report in and do 30 days in jail for the next, I guess, 6 years.
Do you see a lot of sentences like that? That's kind of unusual.
Well, I mean, she had her family support, and that goes a long way.
Yeah,
Because she still had 2 other children. And I guess the judge did a balancing, she
Right.
balanced like the needs of her current living children,
yeah,
rehabilitation, if the woman had a drug problem.
right,
I mean, that's the thing about the courthouse, man. You never know what you're gonna walk into. I could be having the greatest day and all of a sudden I end up getting stuck in
It
court
all goes to
watching,
hell.
And you have 30 different people who are sitting there that
Right.
interpret things.
watching the
different.
saddest
Yeah.
stuff. I'm just like,
I mean, the case that you just talked about, that seems fair to me. That, I mean, she is being punished.
right,
You know, she has to spend some time in
right.
jail.
She's convicted. She's a convicted felon.
Right.
Right.
But it is, I mean, if somebody's issue is drug addiction,
Right.
it's not like she didn't intend.
Right. What was the most impressive thing about the victim impact statement is that one of the family members forgave her and said, I have no other choice but to forgive you because you have 2 other children and you need, but turn your life around. you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
it was very
It's very
powerful.
similar to, people get upset on failure to properly store firearms
Right,
because there isn't, a lot of them basically, they don't go to prison. If
right.
anything, they're going to do a short amount. Right. So people are upset about that, but you have to live with that guilt.
Right. That's,
Right.
yeah,
It's a
that's the
prison
thing.
within a
Yeah.
prison.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's just like these awful situations where somebody, the 2-year-old is behind the vehicle, they don't
Right.
see it and they're backing out.
yeah,
The person who does that, you're going to have to live with that for the
Right.
rest of your life.
right. Like Andrea Yates, that's why she has to forever, for the rest of her life, be medicated to the point of failure to achieve lucidity, because the moment she comes to, I believe, and she realizes what she's done,
How does she
I
live
don't
with
think she could
herself?
ever live
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
That would make someone go insane.
Well, right, yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, it kind of proves there are worse things than going to prison.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree? I mean,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Well, also this woman who I just alluded to, the drowning, she's on the hook for the state of Texas. This is not a slap on the wrist. She's
Right.
gonna have to take classes and not do
Did
drugs.
she get deferred or regular?
Straight probation,
really,
to my knowledge. That, once again, I wasn't privy to the case. but-
sure.
But, I mean, it'd almost be better if she got deferred, because then the full range of punishment would be available if she did violate.
Right.
Whereas on a straight probation, the judge is limited to only the
Max.
Does that
max.
happen a lot? And for people that don't understand, there's, you can get probation and then you can get what's called deferred adjudication probation.
Right.
And what that means is if you complete your probation
Right.
successfully,
Right.
you can honestly say you're not convicted
Yes,
of a
the
felony.
charges are dismissed.
And then you can go work at Fox News.
That's what happened to me. But if you act up, if you don't do your probation,
Right.
then the judge can sentence you to the maximum.
Exactly.
that
So-
you fixed.
So if you got deferred for a manslaughter and you're on a 6-year deferred,
Yeah.
on the 5th year, the 364th day you mess up, you're looking at now 2 to 20.
Yeah,
And all the good time, all the good things you've done,
that it doesn't matter
doesn't
anymore.
matter.
Do you see it happening a lot where the judge does say, okay, you didn't do what you were supposed to do, so now I'm gonna give you the
I
maximum?
see, well, I mean, it depends on what the,
They're not getting the maximum.
It dep-
I doubt that.
it depends on what the
Probably not.
violation is.
Yeah,
So
right.
there's no debtor's prison in Texas.
Right.
So if we're talking about fees and fines, and the people are just, so let's say you're on a felony probation, how many job prospects do you think you're gonna
Right,
have?
yeah, yes.
Right, so what's the first thing you're gonna go behind on? Your fees and your fines.
And also too, you look at people that they get in this situation, they have to keep going to court.
Right. And
So
paying
how
the
many,
fees and fines.
right, and how many jobs are gonna say, yeah, we're gonna let you off
Yes.
again today to go to court?
Exactly, yeah. And especially if the judge is making them come to court day for day because they haven't hired a lawyer yet.
Right,
I mean, heck, hiring a lawyer, I've just lost my job.
yeah.
I just lost my apartment. I just lost my car.
But
It's
it,
just a
it,
slippery
it does
slope.
show that one stupid mistake,
Right,
like
exactly.
driving
Especially
drunk.
DWI.
Right.
Yeah.
Very costly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
it was
telling you guys
expensive.
earlier,
Yeah.
a student recently was driving allegedly intoxicated, and they want to say that he ran over a homeless person who was asleep on a curb.
Wow,
And so there's the whole issue that the driver allegedly tried to bribe some of the workers.
Right, that was the Jack in the Box
Yeah,
workers.
Yeah.
yeah. And so that's just, one bad move,
right.
But
But then it just got worse, right? It's
that's what we call
like,
making things worse.
yeah, yeah,
A client of mine was getting pulled up for DWI. All he had to do was stop. He ended up taking the police on a 100-mile 100-mile-per-hour chase that lasted 3 miles. He ended up T-boating a girl coming home from prom,
Wow.
and he killed her.
I will never understand why people decide they're going to take off. Because even if you got away, which very rarely does the person get away, they know who you
They
are.
got your goods already. They have your license,
They're gonna
driver's
come,
license.
right,
they
they'll
have-
just come and
You
get you
ever had
later.
clients charged with evading arrest?
Oh, yeah.
What do they tell you? I mean, do you ask
That's
them
what I asked him.
why?
I'm like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
I'm like, you were looking at the maximum, like you weren't wearing a driver's license. Now you're charged with felony evading in a motor vehicle. How'd that work out for
Do
you?
they
Yeah.
tell you why they did what
I
they
freaked
did?
out. My friend told me to run, so I just ran. I'm like, this is what my mom was always right. If a friend jumps off a bridge.
Are you gonna jump off the bridge? That's.
It's just, the
It's-
momisms keep coming back in adult life.
All right, so what's the next new law? Okay, this is really interesting. Again, my life sometimes a walking reality show. So there's a new law called tampering,
Oh, yeah.
removing, tampering, or destroying your ankle monitor.
Which is surprising that wasn't a law for a long time.
Right?
I would say 98% of the people actually that we talked to said, isn't that a law? No,
Right, yeah.
We had to pass a law. There's about a dozen states now that actually have statutes on that. So we joined our ranks on that.
You would always make a good point too, before it became a law, that if you went into the state capitol and you broke a
I
chair
went
or
into
you
a
destroyed
representative's
something.
Right, I went
Right.
into a state representative's office and just smashed a chair, I would be charged with criminal mischief.
Right.
But I'm on probation and I have to wear an ankle monitor on parole and I destroy that, I'm not charged.
Right.
That makes zero
But
sense to me.
I guess the issue is whether it's state property or whether it's personal property.
Well, you're not paying for the monitor, so your tax dollars pay for that.
Well, there are
No.
some,
But
there
the-
are some
There are
bonding
some.
companies, there are some private companies the state of Texas has contracted with,
Right.
and they're getting buku bucks. That's why,
Well, can't the
Every Tom, Dick, and
defendant
Harry
be
now-
ordered to pay for it?
yes,
But then you're paying kind of to rent it. You're not right.
Basically, you're on it X amount of months, and if you complete the obligations, then the court can make a motion to remove the ankle monitor.
right.
Right.
Well, there's a
Happens,
whole
yeah.
controversy stirring at the Criminal Justice Center where, so not everyone who's charged with a crime deserves an ankle monitor. We can all agree.
Well,
with that,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
First
It's not
offender,
overload now.
but now the bond condition du jour is you get an ankle monitor, you get an
They,
ankle monitor.
yeah,
And I've spoken with some bondsmen and they informed me that the county has gotten a contract with an ankle monitor company out of California and the tune of millions. And so that's why.
and it does,
That
I
could be a
think,
story for you.
It would be a
Right.
really good story.
I think it weakens the whole thing too, when you start giving it to multiple people.
Right.
Because let's face it, there's not that many people that are watching the
Right.
folks that have an ankle
Right.
monitor.
I mean, it's a similar thing with the scram devices, the blow and goes that you carry.
Yeah,
Like there could be an argument to be made that not everyone, let's say it's your first DWI, you've never been in trouble before. Do you really need to carry
Right.
that?
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you're a professional, you have to leave a board meeting to go blow into this device.
Right.
You have to blow
and I
7
don't
times a
understand
day.
why an ankle monitor would be one of your first bond conditions.
Right.
Because aren't you being told, stay away from,
Right. But,
so-and-so and
an
don't
ankle
do
monitor
that?
is just a monitor, just like
That's
a
all it is.
protective
You
order is
want
a
to know
piece
what
of
my
paper.
line is at? And you're welcome to use it, but I get royalties on it. Is an ankle monitor is as good as the person who wants to honor it.
right,
If they want to honor it, it's the greatest tool in the
Yeah.
world.
Just
And
like
if they
protective
don't,
orders.
Don't
if
mean
you're-
squat.
If you're dead set on
Right.
violating that
Going-
protective order, it's just a piece of paper.
it's a piece of paper, that's
And
right.
It upsets me to no end when a client, I sit there with him and I'm like, okay, you know what, him or her, you know what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. And the minute they leave court, that they do the exact first thing they're not supposed to do. And then bam, every time you violate a protective order, that's yet another felony.
Right,
So how's that working out for you?
yeah, it's like, don't do that. Well, and how many,
I've charted now about a dozen offenders charged. Most of them are on parole, but I've noticed lately they're charging offenders who are on bond as
Right.
well with that. And the most part, it's a state jail felony
Mhm.
unless you're on parole or for a violent offense, then it
Mhm.
gets bumped to a third-degree felony. But this guy right here, Joe Roger out of Lamar County. You know where Lamar County is?
No,
Do you?
Now,
Come on, you've practiced everywhere.
I
where
know,
is
but-
it?
I don't know, somewhere in North Texas.
I would say,
by
yeah.
By
We
Paris,
should
by-
have said it. He doesn't know.
I did, it's by Paris.
Paris, Texas.
Paris,
Okay.
Texas, not Paris, France, right? So he's a convicted sex offender.
Mhm.
He has multiple convictions for failure to register, failure to register, failure to register, failure to register, right? His first conviction was indecency with a child.
Right.
So one of his conditions of parole was to have an ankle monitor, which obviously that didn't work very well for him. He got 25 years.
What?
Look, 25,
On that
25
statute?
years
Wow.
For tampering
for
with,
tampering with it. That's
but that would be because of,
because it was
Let's
prior.
just talk
Yeah.
about this right now. Let's talk about the
Okay.
irony that he was on parole for molesting children.
Well,
repeatedly?
he actually, that case ended.
I
He
know,
was actually
but he
on
got
parole
more
for not
time.
registering.
He
Yeah,
got more
right,
time
right.
for this
That's
than for the
true.
actual crime.
that's kind of sad, isn't it?
That is
Valid point.
Yeah.
very sad.
Yeah.
Hey, you can tamper with our children, but don't tamper with our monitors.
Don't mess with ankle monitors.
Right,
That
that
is
is,
upsetting. That's
you're
upsetting.
right, that's a very strange message to basically send out. When you get more time for tampering with your electronic monitoring
Than
device.
you did for the underlying offense for which you had to wear the monitor.
And you
Right.
see that like in drug cases too versus violent offenses. But this one, I just found this yesterday and I'm thinking, if I'm TDCJ
Yeah,
and I've got a bunch of people who are getting released on parole and you've got them in a room and you're telling them about some of the new laws, I would say, oh, by the way, this guy just got
Right.
25
Don't do
years.
it.
Right.
So guess what? Don't end up like,
yeah,
Yeah.
Joe
Reynolds,
Roger.
Rogers.
right,
One of the other
It's terrible.
new laws deals with fentanyl.
deals with, there's a new, fentanyl, everybody's talking about. I mean, it's serious stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
It's sad.
it's causing more deaths amongst people like 18 to 47, than illnesses, suicide, guns, and all that stuff, death by fentanyl. So there's a new law basically says murder by fentanyl.
Mhm.
And we just now had the second case that has now been charged by that. And there's a death of a 16-year-old young man
Mhm.
who, strangely enough, he traded his PlayStation.
That's how serious that stuff is.
Yeah, he's charged by murder by fentanyl. And so we're going to be talking about that today, but this was another new law that's gone into effect. And I know there's some federal laws also dealing with that
Yeah.
as well. But
Right.
I think you're going to, and this takes time. So for example, this 16-year-old died in September.
Right.
And it's taken this long to finally, put together, what happened and how he died.
Right.
It's not an easy thing to investigate.
Or
Right.
prove, for that matter.
Yeah.
By the time drugs get to a certain person, they probably pass through a whole series of people.
Well, and as the alleged drug dealer, couldn't you make the argument that, well, that person may have put something else into it
So-
or,
Unless it's like a one-on-one drug person, like, there's chances that whoever this person sold it to someone who sold it to someone.
Right, yeah.
Someone, and, I mean, it's
You
all
gotta-
about
you-
money.
You got to prove that chain, right?
Right,
Right.
There was no irregularities in the chain of custody.
right, yeah.
Man, I sound like an attorney.
Yeah,
you do.
So do
Well, you've
you.
been around.
we're
should
gonna
have a
take,
law firm.
in tonight's breaking bond, we're gonna take a look at the defendant that's charged with murder by fentanyl. The most disturbing thing that we found is that, once again, this is a situation where you gotta wonder, why was this guy even out in the first place?
He was on multiple felony bonds. He had another case that was in the news in which he shot at a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
That case, ultimately, something happened. We'll talk about what happened with that case. But the stalking one that he was out on bond, I'll just give you an example. There were 182 text messages between 3 a.m. and 4:47 a.m. So
Wow.
that's,
But were they offensive? That's the thing about stalking. What if he was like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you?
Well,
Like Elf.
how would,
not to make a joke, but there is a.
no, you're right. I mean, yeah, there's a difference between I love you, I love you, I
Right,
love you,
or
then
I'm
I'm gonna
gonna
kill you, I'm
kill
gonna
you,
kill you, I'm
I
gonna
hate
kill you,
you,
I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill
Well,
you.
I can't even tell you what some of the messages.
Yeah, they're,
Oh,
And
okay.
I'll show you because they're very descriptive and involve acts of violence.
Yeah,
Well, then
it's-
that's, yeah.
they're troubling, to
So
say
he
the
was on
least.
bond for stalking
He
and then
was
he
on
got charged with
bond
murder
for-
by fentanyl?
He was on bond for DWI, assault with a bodily injury,
A lot of
a
stuff,
lot of stuff,
a lot of
a
stuff.
lot of stuff.
And
he's
that-
got
and we're gonna-
prior convictions, so we'll talk about this new.
Yeah, we're gonna delve into that. You'll see that on tonight's Breaking Bond on Fox 26 News at 9. Hey, we appreciate you joining us and be kind to yourself and everyone else.
Stay safe and dry.
Yes, have a good